Really, what's happened is this new consumer, right, has just completely shifted the game, if you will. And I believe social media has a lot to do with it and the connectivity that we have today versus we had the other in past generations, if you will, access to. And we're trying to make sure to understand what's important to them, why it's important to them, and then serve them. And I think what DXM does is we provide a one-stop solution.
Welcome to today's episode of Staying Curious. I'm your host, Amy Heuschkel, and our guest today is Matthew Wallace. Matthew has worked in multiple senior leadership roles across 30 plus years with organizations including Wal-Mart and PVH Corp, the owner of companies and brands like Tommy Hilfiger and Calvin Klein. Matthew holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Management from Ithaca College and studied at Philadelphia College of Textiles and Science. Matthew was an adjunct professor of graduate studies at FIT for supply chain management, and he's currently at the advisory board of Alex Lemonade, which is a foundation leading charity dedicated to curing pediatric cancer, and is currently the CEO of DXM, which is an on-demand manufacturing platform that is changing the way the fashion industry manufactures. Please join me in welcoming Matthew Wallace. Thank you, Matthew, for joining us today. I'm very excited to speak with you. How are you doing?
Doing well, Amy. Thank you for having me. It's great to see you today on this Friday.
Great. So DXM sounds like a game changer. So tell me a little bit about what Project DXM is and your involvement.
Yeah, so as you said, I'm the CEO and co-founder of DXM. And DXM's here to really usher in the next era of fashion by fusing the consumer's needs with Industry 4.0. We're a fashion tech startup, and we're putting the apparel value chain in the hands of the consumer, from inspiration to design to delivery. And what's been interesting is throughout our journey, from the start, we've been able to get some major brands and some incredible manufacturing partners, global manufacturing partners, on board. So really, in summary of what it is we are a technology-driven, on-demand, both SaaS, software as a service, and MaaS, manufacturing as a service, manufacturing platform. We offer it all, from the technology to the manufacturing, and we're enabling that consumer to help co-create personalized, customized product and allow brands and retailers to utilize the platform and our MaaS model for inventory optimization.
So why DXM? Why now? Why was it created?
Well, a couple of things I want to clarify. People might say with all of the supply chain disruptions going on, well, this is fairly timely. This is actually coming up on 4 years from the first discussion about the why. And the why is actually fairly simple. What we're seeing now in the supply chain disruptions due to both pandemic and perhaps even geopolitical, these things have been going on certainly for the last 20 years of my career in the industry, and probably my entire career. I just wasn't cognizant of it, the first 10 or so of them, if you will. And part of that was the start of my career. We actually made product, cut and sew product in the United States of America. And when it started to shift off back in the late 80s and early 90s, the supply chain started to become longer and disparate. And really the why was the consumer has just completely shifted how, what, when, why they want. And they want what they want, when they want it, and how they want it. And that is really why DXM came into play. It is helping supply chain security. It is ultimately helping lead times and perhaps more local manufacturing and other things. But the truth is, it's really the consumer that has shifted why we need to be more fast and agile and get the consumer things quickly and have them be part of the process from end to end.
So talk a little bit about the consumer, or the customer. One of the things I heard recently at a show is that we always call them consumers, and yet we're trying to be more sustainable, and so therefore trying to shift that model of consume. Like stop consuming so much and treat them more like a customer. And this, it's an interesting thought, and I do think that what you do is starting to shift that mindset that they're a customer. So talk a little bit about their demands right now. What are they asking for, and how has that changed?
Yeah, well, first I want to share that and Amy, it's a great question and great point, and I'm not surprised you're hearing this because I think everybody's hearing this at this point. And we went and did some research. We did some social listening for several weeks across the United States only on social networks like Facebook and Instagram and TikTok about what consumers were talking about sustainable, local, corporate responsibility, customize, co-create, influencers. And not surprising, 18 to 30-year-olds were 91% of the people discussing those type of things. Because we do know that there's 5 generations have purchasing power right now in the marketplace for anything. Yet those generations are very different in what's important to them, and where they shop and how they shop, more importantly. So where, again, perhaps the older generation is more traditional in what they were used to, where the Gen Z, right, is completely focused on using social commerce. Whether that's them going to a physical store or not, they're still using social commerce in a way to communicate, learn, and understand. And really what's happened is this new consumer, right, has just completely shifted the game, if you will. And I believe social media has a lot to do with it and the connectivity that we have today versus we had the other in past generations, if you will, access to. And we're trying to make sure to understand what's important to them, why it's important to them, and then serve them. And I think what DXM does is we provide a one-stop solution, right, for these brands, retailers, or consumers, versus really playing, if you will, in lanes, or if you will. And what we're trying to do is bring together an end-to-end solution by bringing together an ecosystem model, similar to what really has been done already in the auto industry, aerospace, and electronics, to fuse together, again, the ability to serve that consumer in the fashion market with Industry 4.0. And that in itself will make things more sustainable, because on-demand itself is more sustainable. Everybody has probably, who's familiar with the industry, has heard that, we waste 20 to 30%. I don't know the exact number because it seems to keep shifting in that range of what we produce today goes into a landfill. Well, on-demand doesn't do that. You only produce after the consumer purchases it. So there's no waste or markdowns or allowances or landfill in that product to the degree it is today. Of course, if that consumer is done with that product, that may not necessarily then go into a landfill, but it may. The other thing we're looking to do is use highly automated processes in the manufacturing with organizations such as Lectra in their cutting and digital printing and things like that, where we're really eliminating waste and we're minimizing water use.
Yeah, so it's interesting because there's on-demand manufacturing in this industry is sometimes a buzzword, right? It seems like not attainable. So talk a little bit about the supply chain and how on-demand differs when it comes to a big brand. So we talk a lot about on-demand when it comes to smaller brands being able to get into the industry, but you're creating an ecosystem that's helping bigger brands do this on-demand model, which seems to me like it's going to make it pretty sustainable, because once the bigger brands do it, then everybody follows. So talk a little bit about the supply chain and the shifts and how brands are doing that.
Yeah, look, the model's for anybody. It's any creator, any designer, any brand, any retailer, right? It could be that startup small brand, but to your point, yeah, we're trying to really, coming out of big corporate companies like PVH Corp and Wal-Mart, right? We listened, we heard, I actually participated and wrote, right, that we needed to be more quote unquote consumer centric, we needed to be more agile, we needed to serve the consumer in a new way. Yet it was just so difficult to go do it inside of a big corporation, which is why we spun off DXM and created it, was to help those corporations. So we really think there's different tiers of the supply chain. In no way, shape, or form, right, is the basic white t-shirt, blue shirt, white shirt, black pant going to become just completely on demand. You're still going to import that product from potentially a lower and slower cost region. And what on demand does is it just brings what we think is the third prong to a good supply chain model. So you have your kind of lower and slower model. You have your nearshore model where you can react a bit to trends faster, and then your on-demand model. For the consumer that perhaps is underserved by some more historical retailers or brands, but wants to be part of the process, right? Via something they see on YouTube or an influencer, they want to be part of perhaps personalizing or co-creating something, and they want it very quickly, and they care about where it's being made and who's making it. That's where we see this on-demand model playing a role. And it might not be, right, certainly not going to be 50% of some of these larger brands, but 5 to 10% of some of these larger brands is a pretty significant business. And then those consumers who may not be being addressed by these brands become consumers of the brand, perhaps in a more traditional way when they get older. And then those next generations behind the Gen Z, right, certainly I think are going to just continue to want this on-demand model. So what we see is a way for those larger brands and retailers to get into this, to serve that consumer. But we also are well aware that it's a small percentage right now of probably them, but it's a way to crack into it for them.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. So it's very clear that not all of them, it's not one answer. It's definitely just making it a little more rounded of how brands are going about manufacturing. So they're covering the 18 all the way up to the 85-year-old when they're producing things, and they're not missing anybody, which is also very important. So going into the future, we talk about how big brands used to market in ways, you talk a lot about social influencing, but bigger brands used to spend a lot of money in marketing to make themselves aware. Talk a little bit about that and how things are shifting and what needs to change.
Yeah. So look, I think traditionally the changes that are needed are again, I would say this industry is encroaching on becoming, I believe, the dirtiest industry in the world as oil and gas go into more alternative energy, right? Which they are making inroads in. Look, it's not going to get shut off in that space. How much are we doing in our industry, right, to make inroads in that space? And we're doing, in my opinion, significantly less than what some of the large oil and gas companies are doing. So what's going to happen, I think, on a sustainability standpoint, our industry is actually going to just get more and more and more exposure to what we're doing that doesn't work for the world. And I believe that the younger consumers, the young millennials, and the Gen Z and what'll be Gen Alpha next, are going to continue to have a louder and louder voice that is not something, right, I am interested in being part of. So if your brand is not doing something to shift away, understanding it's not a light switch, right, to shift away from this, I don't know that I'll buy your brand. And the younger consumer is not loyal, right? They're not brand loyal. It's very, very interesting, different than, I would say, even myself and my generation, where look, we liked a brand, we liked a store, and we even met people in those stores or interacted with them, and that's where we went, and that's where we transacted. That world has shifted quite a bit today, Amy, and I only think it's going to keep shifting. So I think, again, it really goes back to the demands on these companies, these retailers, these brands, to find a way to address the needs of who's going to have the pocketbook, right, or the wallet, or perhaps the cryptocurrency, right, to go spend.
Yeah, don't even get me started with that conversation. Talk a little bit about the ecosystem that you're developing with these brands, in hopes that they can capture this audience and this consumer and be more agile so that they're not producing to the problem anymore.
Yeah, really, the model was not something that was an Albert Einstein, oop, I've invented this. It was really, again, taken off the heels of other industries. And if you can bring together academia, a startup ecosystem, incredible advanced manufacturing, core manufacturing, brands, logistics, last mile, if you will, and great technology together, you'd say, wow, that's a lot, that's a mouthful, right? But if you can bring those together, and the auto industry and electronics industry has already done it, you can successfully, right, serve that consumer need for a business or a brand. And let's just take an example like Mini Cooper, right? They do a great job. You're able to kind of customize your car and your seats and your steering wheel, right? You can put your name on it and this and that. Well, there's some pretty incredible technology and pretty incredible manufacturing organizations that aren't necessarily just BMW or Mini Cooper that are playing a role in that. And they've been all brought together by BMW, right, Mini Cooper, to go do those things. That's the similar model. And I think what's really been interesting about it is when you talk to the retailers and the brands and they see who's come together, the 21 organizations who's come together within the DXM model to say, I do want to be a part of helping make this change. And not just because it's the right thing to do, right? But because it actually will help us in our business serve our customer and our consumer in a better way and offer something new there. It's a business, plus it's the right thing to do. And at this point, I would say that we have great momentum, plus everybody's being put on an equal playing field. And that has really not been the case before, right? Traditionally, big brands and retailers, right, have been at the top of the food chain, and everything's kind of played down, right? And in this model, the manufacturers and those advanced, everybody's playing in the same playing field with kind of an equal share to it. And that itself is a very different approach to things. And I believe that those manufacturers, advanced manufacturers, really appreciate, right, the brands and the retailers that are willing to play right on that equal playing field in a different way. And again, I want to be clear, it's not the whole business model, it's a piece of the business model.
Can you shed any light on what that looks like? Like, what are we going to see from these brands?
Yeah,
Inside scoop? What
yeah,
can you tell us?
I think what you'll see from one particular brand based in the U.S., a large privately held company, won't disclose at this point. You'll see in the next 40 days, right, launched on their e-commerce site, the ability for a consumer to customize, personalize, co-create, and it's a couple things. We're using artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms for fit, right, which is one of the big problems in returns in e-commerce, if not the biggest problem in returns in e-commerce at this point. And we're utilizing through our ecosystem data that it's inclusive of over 100 million points of data at this point. We believe will reduce returns by double digits in this. There's an inclusivity piece there. So it's not about a size. There is no size. It's your size, Amy. You order it and it's for you, if you will. And on top of that, there's a functionality piece also where the consumer gets to pick, hey, I want this on the left side instead of the right side because I'm left-handed. Where maybe right now, right, it's only done on the left side or the right side, if you will. So it's really about inclusivity and functionality. And yeah, coming to a theater near all of us soon, we'll see things launch in, like I said, the next 45 days, and hopefully the momentum will just continue from there. But look, credit to these organizations who are willing to step out and try, right? A lot of credit to them for just wanting to try, experiment, and understand that when you're coming at this, right, and some of this is fused together, and it hasn't necessarily been done this way before. Because again, I would argue all this has been done before, but maybe in silos or segregations or in other industries. But for this industry, maybe not exactly this approach before. Give a lot of credit to the people who are willing to try it.
Yeah, and it's showing that they're not only willing, but they're recognizing that there needs to be a change. And if they keep doing things the same way, then they may not survive. I mean, I think that's kind of the general message here with this is that sustainability is important, customization is important, inclusivity is important. And if you're not willing to dip your toe in the water, you're not really the brand that we thought you were, kind of, So it's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah, and I think you touched on something before, Amy, around marketing. Yeah, I think, look, a lot of retailers and brands do a great job marketing celebrities, right, if you will. And those celebrities run across the gamut, whether they're TikTok stars or YouTube stars or athletes or other. There has to be something behind the marketing, right, if you will. And I think some organizations do a terrific job with that. But I think we have a long way to go in our industry, right, to not just market, but to actually come together. And I think what we'll see more and more, as you've already started to see in the sustainability space, that brands and retailers are just going to continue to come together, right, to help shift things in the industry. And again, I think electric vehicles, right, or hybrids or whatnot, right, the Prius was the first big commercial one out there over 20 some years ago. But the momentum right now in electric vehicles, just in the auto industry, is pretty amazing, where most of the auto industry has announced that really in the next 10 years, most of the fleets will all be electric, right? Many of them it really took a newcomer to the market to actually, I think, really propel this, where some of the more traditional companies, right? So think about that. Tesla came into the marketplace and really disrupted. And originally it was like, won't work. And now the view is everybody else needs to catch up,
Yeah,
right?
it's
And
interesting because fashion usually is the opposite. The big brands have to lead for everybody else to feel like it's safe. But maybe there is,
but
some other
but
way.
but I think Toyota was trying to lead with the Prius,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And I think they made inroads, but then the next iterations from let's say the other big car companies, whether it be Mercedes or BMW or GM or Ford, they all came out with some, but they didn't take. It took an innovative, different type organization like Tesla to really now say that, okay, Volkswagen's going to do this and Ford's going to do that and GM's going to do this and right, and Toyota's going to do that and Volvo's going to do this. I think the consumer is that disruptor in our industry. It's not. I think they're the Tesla of our industry at this point that's going to force this change. And look, that's my opinion. And everybody can say, oh, well, hindsight's 2020 or Monday morning quarterback on Tesla, right? Apple's done the same thing in some cases. So what I said before is there's other industries that have actually seen this stuff play through. And our industry is ripe for it to take.
yeah. And it would be great if the consumer is the one who pushes it. I mean, it seems fitting. Clothing is very personal. So it only makes sense that it would be driven by the consumer. It's a very personal thing. Trust me, it took me, how many tries to get this outfit right today. So I get it. I get it.
That's
Well,
right.
Matthew, this is awesome. So I appreciate your time today. This was amazing. I'm sure the audience got a lot of great value out of this. And if anybody wants to connect with Matthew Wallace, www.projectdxm.com, or you can find him on LinkedIn if you're interested. And again, Matthew, it was always a pleasure, and I'm sure we'll be speaking very soon.
Amy, thank you for having me, and I hope everybody who's listening has a wonderful day and weekend.
Thank you, Matthew. Have a great one.
Okay, bye-bye.